So let's dive into it. I guess we'll start off. I want to start with you, John. You want to start AFC or NFC for our to start off?
Let's start AFC because we're
Alrighty.
both fans of the NFC.
All right. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so AFC. If you want to just say who your division winners are first, and then we'll go into rankings. We'll do that for each conference. So I guess if you want to start top down, at least in my head, is AFC East. Who do you feel is going to be the winner of that division, and why?
This division's one of the more competitive ones, but I think the Bills are still on top. With the other two competitive teams, I think there's just more questions at quarterback with Tua, with Mac Jones. So yeah, I mean, I'm sticking with the Bills. Josh Allen. I mean, it's sort of like in the NBA. You go like who's the best player. I feel like in the NFL, you can tend to go with okay, who has the best quarterback, as long as like the teams are comparable. And obviously, the Bills won last year. I think their defense could be better than last year, just because of last year was just a weird year, And so I think that with Sean McDermott probably, being more involved in the defensive play calling, like you talked about, and how he got more involved in the second half of the year, I think they could be improved. I don't even know that much about Gabriel Davis, but from all the Bills fans who were not happy about my comments on the wide receiver core, I've learned a lot more, and they're very excited about him. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Bills are probably going to still win this division. What about you?
Yeah, I got Buffalo too. I love Josh Allen. And it's funny enough you mentioned Gabriel Davis because he's like basically going to be my number two receiver in our dynasty league this year. I kind of drafted on an upside. So, I didn't look at the comments, but I saw, I look at our YouTube when I'm uploading stuff. I saw there's a bunch of ones on the Bills, and I should have looked too because I love the Bills. So I didn't know that. That's kind of
They were not very happy that I said they were a Stephon Diggs injury away from
But I
a
mean, it is a
bad
little
wide
true
receiver
because then
core.
Gabriel Davis, I don't think many people, you wouldn't feel comfortable with Gabriel Davis being your number one receiver in a very pass heavy offense. But, anyways, yeah, I'm with you though. Buffalo, it's Josh Allen. I know people are saying it's a 1 year thing, but Josh Allen is for real. I mean, he was a huge part of that offense. It's not like he had an anomaly year. He showed growth in terms of passing and throwing the ball and making progressions. I mean, yeah. He still had, the few plays where you're like, what are you doing, Josh? Like, just, chicken with his head cut off moments. But they're very much trimmed down. Like, it's gone down by down, year by year. And he's honed that in, just been a better decision maker overall. So, I'm going with Josh Allen, the Bills, for the NFC East, or AFC East, excuse me. So now the AFC North, another tough division that's always been competitive. A lot of turnover between different teams. Like, it's always like a reshuffling every year. Who do you have for the AFC North?
So this one I kind of talked about when we did the off-season reviews. To me, it's between Baltimore and Cleveland, and it's a really tough decision. Um, and I don't know. I don't know the general like public opinion on who's going to win this division. I haven't like heard
Yeah,
much,
same.
but I think I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns. I really like the way that they finished last year. I I think they just have a better recipe for success when it comes to winning in the regular season. I really love the duo of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, the offensive line. I just think they're really deep on offense. And I expect Baker Mayfield to probably take a step this year under Kevin Stefanski. I mean, I think this is the first time in his entire career he's had a offensive like mind returning as the guy who's going to call plays the next year. I almost said offensive coordinator, but obviously Stefanski is the head coach. And I think they added some good defensive pieces. They have guys returning from injury like Grant Delpit. So yeah, I'm taking the Browns, but I think it's going to be really competitive, and I would not be surprised if the Ravens wanted to.
Yeah, I can forget about Odell. Also turning back from injury, huge part of their
Yep.
offense. But yeah, I was literally in the same boat. Once again, just everyone, John and I, we didn't like confer. We don't talk. This is all like what he is saying to me. What I'm saying to him is new. So it's not like we confer. But I do have the Browns winning that division. It was very close between them and the Ravens. But same kind of argument as you. I mean, on both sides of the ball, good defensive and offensive lines. I think we mentioned before in their episode, love the linebacker Omosu Koromora, and he did pop in preseason. Sign John Johnson, and like you mentioned, Grant Delpit comes back, and he doesn't have to be amazing right away because they have John Johnson. They have solid corners, and then I think especially since this is year 2 in the offense, and that the offense started clicking last year, and they have a preseason in training camp with Odell Beckham, and I believe he's expected to be 100% by the start of the season. I think that, I'm not going to say he's going to be the Odell of the Giants, where he was putting up those numbers, but I definitely think he should be better than we've seen in Cleveland because it has been disappointing. But, I mean, regardless, even if he's not doing well, I think we saw last year this team can still have success without him, being 100%. And I think that should, in theory, take the pressure off of him and Baker a little bit so that, they can just let that connection come naturally. But I went Browns. Obviously, like you mentioned, Ravens. We have questions about their pass game, and then Pittsburgh. We have a lot of questions about their offense as a whole, and I'm obviously worried about heck, T.J. Watt. We don't know if he's even going to sign and if he's going to hold in and not play for a while. That could affect their defense. On top of the fact that their secondary is a little iffy. Minus Minka Fitzpatrick. Obviously, I don't want the Minka Fitzpatrick fans coming in my DMs again. I meant like strictly corners because all you got really is Joe Hayden of note there. So that is the AFC North. That's we both have the Browns going down. I think we know who you can. I think I know who you're gonna pick for this next one. But the AFC South, who you got here?
Oh, the AFC South. I mean, obviously, it's not Houston. It's not going to be Jacksonville. So it's really just between the Colts and the Titans. And I just feel way more safe with the Titans now. I think the Colts absolutely have the potential to be a division winner. But there's just still question marks about Carson Wentz, when he'll be ready to go, how he's going to look with, just the foot stuff. Same with Quentin Nelson, like that. Those are two very important players to their success right now. And so there's just some more question marks there. And who knows, maybe their defense, I think for the most part, they brought everybody back. I know they lost Malik Hooker, but he didn't really even play that much last year. And I think they had
Julian Blackmon.
Yeah, Julian Blackmon, who really popped last year. So for the most part, I don't really have any concerns about their defense. But with the Titans, it's Ryan Tannehill, it's Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, Julio Jones. Like the offensive line is solid. Defense wasn't amazing last year, but it got the job done when it needed to. I'm going to stick with the Titans. But once again, would not be shocked if the Colts can live up to the potential that they have, that they could become better, because overall they have a far better defense. And I still think they have a good enough offense, but overall this is an offensive league. And when you have a 2,000-yard rusher in Derrick Henry, the receivers, and Ryan Tannehill, who in this Titans offense puts up Patrick Mahomes like numbers, it's hard to bet against them.
So, once again, shocker, going with the Titans as well. I actually think I think their defense will be better. I know I love Caleb Farley. Added him, he looked good in preseason. Brought in Janoris Jenkins too, and this was running a similar New England type defense where it's going to be a lot of complicated schemes, game plan specific. So I think the fact that they have an off season this year will help them, be more prepared than they were last year. Plus, I think Jeffrey Simmons will be better too. And then they still have a few more, obviously have Kevin Byard. So I think the defense will be better. And then, like you mentioned, we know what the offense is. Oh, and they added Julio Jones. And even if Julio's, still miss a game or two, Josh Reynolds is a solid number 3/2. And like we've seen with this offense, as long as A.J. Brown's still there and Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, they'll be fine. With the Colts, it's just, we talked about it in the episode, but they have a brutal start to the season. And the Carson Wentz, the foot, he may be healthy enough to play, but will be fully healthy. We don't know. Same with Quentin Nelson. But in regards to the offense, regardless of, I think the offense will be fine there in Indy. I just think that, like John mentioned, we know what the Titans are, and they're just slightly better, I think, overall than the Colts, and they don't have that brutal schedule. So we're both going with. Go ahead. We're going with the Titans.
I was just agreeing with you.
Okay. Alrighty, so last side, I think I'm pretty sure we'll agree again. AFC West. Are you shocking the world here? We both going Kansas City?
I'm going Kansas City, and I don't feel the need to go on a long explanation about that one.
Yeah, we'll go more in depth as in later. Like how far we'll see where we put Kansas City. But I guess we'll see right now. So we had the same four teams: Kansas City, Tennessee, Cleveland, and Buffalo. So that's basically our 1 through 4 seeds, maybe jumbled up. So how do you have the playoffs shaping out for the AFC, John?
So this part's a little tougher because I don't have all the team schedules offhand.
I didn't really do
Um,
that either. I just looked at each, I kind of assessed them in my mind,
yeah,
picked it because to do that is just it's just going down the wormhole because then like you
yeah,
have to keep track of who you gave losses to. It's a lot.
yeah. So I'm gonna put Kansas City number one. I don't see anybody slowing them down. I still think they're a Super Bowl favorite, not even just to go, but to win the whole thing. So putting Kansas City number one. I'm doing this all off the top of my head, by the way. I didn't really prepare what I was going to say ahead of time, so forgive me for that. But
I should do that. For the NFC, I'll go first. Remind me for the NFC playoffs so
okay,
you can do because that one the NFC is tougher than AFC.
yeah, AFC. This is tough because all three of those teams I think are really good. I'm going to go Cleveland number two. I
Wow.
think they could take a jump this year. I mean, like I said, I just like the pieces that they added. I think that the continuation of having, being able to actually progress in the offense that was built last year and try to take steps forward and get even better, on top of being able to, perfect the things that you did last year. I think that's a big thing in the NFL. You need chemistry with your coaching staff, with your teammates. I think that's going to be built. I agree with you. I think this is the year that Odell and Baker finally click. I'm not saying Odell's going to be, Giants Odell, but I think it's going to work. So I'm going to take the Browns number two. I'm going to take the Bills number three. I wouldn't be surprised if, that sort of falls to like a tiebreaker kind of a thing between them and the Browns. But I think overall, from like top to bottom, I think the Browns are the more talented roster. I think the Bills have better talent at like certain, important positions like quarterback, like wide receiver one. I'd take Diggs over Odell, stuff like that. Um, but I think the Browns have the recipe to success to win more regular season games. And then four, I'm going to take the Titans. I still think they're a really good team, but I think out of all those four, I have more questions about them, specifically on the defensive side of the ball.
And then and then who do you have for your wild card? 5, 6, and 7, or do you need a minute? And then I'll just go do my whole.
I can do my wild card.
Okay.
Number five, I'm going to put the Ravens there. Like I said, I think it's going to be really close between them and the Browns. I wouldn't even be shocked if like the Ravens had a better record than the Titans, but obviously they're a wild card team. Uh, oh man, these next two spots are going to be tough. I think number six, I'm going to go the Miami Dolphins. Um, I thought they looked really good last year. I expect Tua to be better than he was last year. I like their defense. I really love the wide receivers they added in Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle. I think Miles Gaskin should be fully healthy this year, after he missed some games last year. I do have some questions about their offensive line, but they have some young guys who could exceed expectations than what they're sort of currently looking at right now with like Liam Eichenberg and Austin Jackson, some guys like that. So I'm going to put the Dolphins sixth, seventh. I'm going to say, and this worries me because a lot of these guys are injury prone, but I'm going to say the Chargers. Um, it does worry me just because of, Derwin James, he's had issues with health. Joey Bosa sometimes has missed some games. Austin Eckler's had some injury issues. But I like their offseason. I like how they beefed up their offensive line with Rashawn Slater, with Corey Linsley. I think those are two really big additions. I think Justin Herbert could have a really solid year. Keenan Allen's going to do Keenan Allen things. Austin Eckler, I really like the addition of his name's Joe Lombardi, right? The offensive coordinator from the Saints. I think that he's the perfect fit for this sort of style of offense, the personnel they have, because they have guys who are very similar to what the personnel guys are in New Orleans. not specifically Herbert, because him and Drew Brees are very different. Herbert's a lot more athletic, has a stronger arm, but Austin Eckler, very similar style back to Alvin Kamara. I think Keenan Allen is overall. I think he has a larger versatility than Michael Thomas, but very similar style players, similar builds, both great route runners, great hands. So I like that addition too. So I'm going to take the Chargers in the 7th spot.
Alrighty. So yeah, for me, one, I have Kansas City, shocker. And two, I went with Tennessee, and I think I played the record a little bit in my head just because they have an easier division than some of these other two divisions. And like I mentioned, the Colts, I feel like if anything, they'll split the season series with the Colts, and then obviously they're going to win both against Jaguars and the Texans. I'm pretty confident in that. And then three, I have Buffalo, and I think also kind of like what you mentioned, I think just because they're their division too, going to play New England twice, going to play Miami twice, they could easily split both of those or one of those. That could easily happen, and they're playing. The other conference winners from the previous year, so they're going to play Kansas City again. I think they'll handle Baltimore. Baltimore won last. No, they played Pittsburgh. I think they'll beat Pittsburgh. They play in week 1. I'm trying to think who was first last year. It was the Titans, I believe,
They also have Washington, which because they play the extra game from the NFC. They don't play the whole NFC. Okay. It's just like the first place from. So they play Washington, which is good defense, and
that'll be a fun game.
So
Bills at 3. And then 4, I have Cleveland, the last team for the AFC North. Once again, because I think Pittsburgh, they could, steal a game against Cleveland or two. Baltimore could. And
even Cincinnati looked competitive with them last year, both games.
Cincinnati had some close games. So that's a division that always plays each other tough. So Cleveland at 4, and then a very close 5. Could be lower at Baltimore. I think it's, like you mentioned, they could have a better record than like the Bills or the Titans. It's just, Cleveland won the division, and so Baltimore's at 5, and then at 6 I have the Patriots. As just the defense, even if Stephon Gilmore's out 6 weeks, they have J.C. Jackson, they have a plethora of corners. They've addressed their defensive line. It looks, it's definitely better and bigger. Brought in some more difference-making linebackers. They get back Dante Hightower, and brought in Matt Judon from free agency. And then offensively, they're going with Mac Jones, and I expect there to be growing pains with Mac Jones, but he's looked good enough in the preseason, and obviously they felt confident enough. Bill Belichick felt confident enough to let go of Cam Newton to go with the rookie. I think that says a lot about how pro-ready Mac Jones is. And they have solid receivers, so I think they'll make it work. Still be a run-heavy offense, and then 7. This was my lead to my 7, which is the Miami Dolphins. This was very tough, because Chargers were in mind, Colts were in mind here, but I went to Dolphins. Tua's looked better in the preseason. He did mention he was struggling to grasp the playbook last year, but I had the Dolphins here, regardless of if Tua is better this year, the same as last year. Defense is really darn good, as we all know, and then offense, like John mentioned, got more weapons. I think their backfield is going to be healthier. The offensive line, it was solid last year, and it's like John mentions too, relatively young. So I think they can take a step forward together. So yeah, I have the Dolphins at 7, which it's, even though they're 7 seed, I think this will be a very tough 7 seed. So that's what I have there. So now this is the tough part. Who do you have? And so in theory, I don't know if you wrote yours down. Okay, well, I'll go with mine real quick. So obviously, in theory, this would mean, playoff-wise wild card. Titans would play the Dolphins. I would have the Titans winning that. It would be very tough and close, but I just think as long as Julio's healthy, obviously, but I'm assuming Julio's healthy at this point, it's just Derrick Henry's a freight train, and it's tough to stop that team. And I think especially because, and I'm blanking on the head coach's name, Mike Vrabel, New England disciple too. I think it's gonna be an interesting clash of him and Brian Flores, because they both come to New England. They both kind of know what they want to do, and I just think as of right now, the Titans have more stars. AJ Brown, Julio Jones, Ryan Tannehill, and then like I just mentioned, that will help win that game in theory, of course. And then 3, Buffalo and New England. I think I'm going Buffalo there to advance. I would have Buffalo advancing there. It was just the Josh Allen is just tough to contain. I mean, Bill Belichick's always had issues. Just, I mean, as with most people, but any with elite quarterbacks that can move. There's a reason that Cam Newton was undefeated against New England. Same with Sean Watson's always balled out against New England. It may not have been wins, and that's more on Bill O'Brien. But if you look back at the results, it's always been close games. And obviously, we all know how Patrick Mahomes has always given it to New England. So going with Buffalo there, and then 4-5 would be Browns Ravens, who would also be playing for the third time. I would be going with the Browns there. Once again, I'm not confident in the Ravens passing game, so they'd have to show more for me. So that means in the next spot, it would be, those three are out, Kansas City playing Browns. It's a rematch of last year. Kansas City winning again. The offensive line's better. And remember, they were, I think, up like 2 scores, and then Mahomes got hurt, and that's when the Browns made their rally. And I think the fact that they played week 1 will help too for the Kansas City as well. So I have Kansas City winning. And at 2, the other game would be Titans-Bills. I have the Bills winning. I just think, even though I mentioned I believe the Titans offense or defense will improve, like it just the Bills offense, it's a machine at this point. And I mean, I'm fairly confident that they will just pick up where they left off last year with Josh Allen. So I have the Bills there. So it's a rematch again, Kansas City, Buffalo. My heart wanted to pick Buffalo because I want to see Josh Allen there, but I just, with the Kansas City's improvements on the offensive line, and I expect their defense to actually be a little bit better, especially up front. And they already played Josh Allen. They already kind of know that Bills offense. And I'm not confident that the Bills can generate a run game outside of Josh Allen. I'm going with Kansas City to be the AFC representatives in the Super Bowl. I know it's pretty chalky, pretty much of a shocker, but AFC kind of is that way. So going with Kansas City as my AFC representative. Are you kind of ready to do yours, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first off, the number 2 seed versus the 7 seed, Browns Chargers. I'm going to take Cleveland. I think, it's just Browns have played in playoff games last year, and they were competitive in both. They beat the Steelers, and they had to play the Chiefs, and that was a very competitive one. And I think that just experience matters. It'd be a lot of those Chargers guys' first playoff run, like Justin Herbert. It'd be his first one. And so I think there'll just be some added pressure, first year coaching staff. So I'm going to take Cleveland there. Bills, Dolphins. The last time they played, Josh Allen and the Bills put up 56 points on them and beat them by 30. I'm not going to say it's going to be that big of a win, but I'm taking the Bills again. I think that the Belichick disciples are just always going to have the same sort of issues, like you mentioned, with guys like Josh Allen, an elite level quarterback. He can move. And when they start scheming up all these crazy blitzes, all that kind of stuff, and just hope that their corners can, shut things down. A quarterback like that, he's going to be able to just make extra time and give his receivers a chance to get open. And so, yeah, I'm going to take the Bills in that sort of matchup. And then Titans Ravens, the faded rematch that keeps happening every year and has gotten really chippy, and they building a little bit of a rivalry. Titans would be at home. Yeah, it's fun to watch. I'm going to take the Baltimore Ravens in that. The upset, the wild card team wins it. I think they have the corners to match up with AJ Brown and Julio Jones. We've seen in the past that they can effectively stop the run against anybody except for Derrick Henry. But I think hopefully after a few years of him running through you could do something about it. So I would be taking the Ravens in that one, which would set up Lamar Jackson versus Patrick Mahomes in the divisional round, the faded matchup that people thought we'd be seeing for decades, and we might see it for decades. I'm going to take the Chiefs in that one. Not surprising. Kansas City, they can score so fast against a team who takes a long time to score. It's just hard to win that sort of matchup. And then we got the Browns versus the Bills in Cleveland. This one's tough. I'm going to take the Browns. I don't know. I believe in the Browns this year. I think they have all the pieces to do whatever they want schematically, really. Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney are going to be forces on the outside. The secondary depth is nice. I like a lot of it. the ability to run the ball, but still have really good receivers like Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think, could have a good year this year. Good tight ends, especially depth-wise, Austin Hooper, Austin Bryant, David Njoku. I'm going to take the Browns because I think overall they just, once again, they're a lot deeper of a roster. And so I'm going to take them there. And that would set up Kansas City versus Cleveland. Unfortunately, I'm going Kansas City, and I say unfortunately because it's just kind of boring to pick them at this point. Although they're a really exciting team to watch, they're the Chiefs. They're really good, and they're going to go to the Super Bowl again.
All right, so both have KC as our winners of the AFC, which I mean, it's not shocking, but it's just what it is. They're good. I think we should all know that. So